Hey everybody, welcome back to the carb table lamp. This is week 2 and we're going to build a lamp. So the first thing you need to do is roll out a slab. You can either pull your slab or put it on the slab roller. You want to make sure it's large enough so that you can make 2 circles the size of those large 7-inch diameter circles we left on the bats. When you are using the slab roller, we are asking you to wear gloves, so don't do what I am doing. I now have to wash all these things, so but we do ask that you cover and put everything back once you're done with it. Okay, so just like always, you need to compress your slabs. Here I'm just making sure that I have enough, and I do. So I'm going to cut off all this excess, put it on a board with plastic, and save it for another project because it's good clay and I'm not going to waste it. I'm also cutting off these extras because I'm going to use those as little slugs, and then I'm compressing both sides of my clay. If you get a little tear in it, don't worry, just compress going in multiple directions and that little hole will cover up. And then you're going to set out in front of the fan. Now you're going to grab your 2 7-inch diameter cylinders that you left on your bat, and you are going to put those together. I'm going to use this scratching tool that I made to scratch up both top sides of the cylinders, and these I'm going to attach. I'm just using some water as the slip here, and then I'm going to put them on top of each other. If I did a good job, they will match. If not, they won't, but you're going to just get it as close as possible. I do recommend getting up and looking all the way around before you decide you've got it on there all the way. I did not do that, and so I'm slightly off, and that will affect you with centering throughout the rest of the project, but you can work around it. I'm then going to compress these pieces together using my harder rib, the flat side, and then I'm also going to take slugs and put it around these little worms just to reinforce, because I do not want it to crack here. These need to stay together, or then the carvings I do won't work and it's just going to collapse. So I put the slugs on, and then I use my ribs again to compress it all down, make it flat. Anywhere that it's not flat, I just fill in with more clay and compress again. Once you have it smooth and how you like it, then you're going to cut it off, the top piece off the bat, and you are just going to use your wire cutter, and instead of pushing down onto the bat, you're going to push up onto the top bat as you cut. And then you're going to compress the inside. And when you're compressing the inside, you need to be careful because it's very easy to push out the belly of this piece, so just carefully do it. And then I had to go back and just kind of straighten my cylinder here. Now you're ready to put your first slab piece on top. We're going to enclose it. So just scratch on the top of your piece, and then I add a little bit of water and create like a slurry on the top of my cylinder. And then I'm going to mark how much clay I need and where to score onto the slab. And then I can attach it. What's kind of great about this piece is I'm not going to cut it exactly to the size of my cylinder. I'm going to cut it just a little bigger. I'm squishing it on here. I'm going to cut it a little bigger because I'm actually going to put it back on the wheel and compress it down into place and fold over those edges so I get a nice seal. So I'm just going to remove it from the slab onto the board where it got a little stuck. And then I will take it and put it back onto the wheel. Once on the wheel, I'm then going to again compress my piece down. This is great. Every time you compress, you're just helping to ensure that you don't have cracks during firing. So compress it down. I roll over the edge so that I have a nice curved edge. And then I'm going to let it sit up just a bit because it's at a soft leather hard stage, and I want to be able to trim it. So I'm going to let it sit for a bit, and then I will trim off that excess clay so that it looks like one solid cylinder. What's great about having this is you've trapped all that air inside, so you're not going to lose your shape when you compress down. it's gonna stay this shape unless you push really hard. Now I'm gonna cut off my cylinder, and I'm going to then flip it and center it onto a clean bat so that I can add the really tall cylinder that we created. Centering when you have a wonky cylinder can be a little hard, so take your time, really look at it, and get as close as possible. Request my chariot, get ya. The doors OPEN. Take that hot road and hop in. Monarch butterflies, you should open up. I'm trying to put your heart together, found it broken up. Going up in smoke, smoking up. Make sure the children in the house, she's inappropriate. The way she's approaching us. Once you found the center, then we're going to put that tall cylinder, the skinny cylinder on the inside. I'm adding some slips, and I used the outside of my brush there so that, because it's long enough to kind of like gouge into the bottom. And I'm just going to then scratch this piece and add some water. I just dipped it in my water, and then I'm going to stick it in and carefully try to get it as centered as possible. Double checking it. And then once it's in there, I'm going to push down. Now I'm going to I decided to take some actual slip because there's little gaps, and I'm going to kind of fill in because I can't get little wormies in there because it's too narrow for my hand. So I put some slip and compress it down with a brush. And then here, because it must have been how I cut it off with that or whatever, it's not flat on the top. So I'm removing some of the clay to even it out, and then removing the excess of that center piece too, so that it's nice and flat, because you need this part to be flat and even because we're going to add another slab here. So once I have it where I want it, I'm going to scratch it up and magically add another slab. Voila. And then I'm going to do almost the same thing, except I'm not going to trim it yet. I'm just going to make sure it's compressed on there, and then I'm going to grab that taller or the one of the larger of the cylinders remaining, and this will be the base. So compressing again, finding the center, scratching and attaching, and we're going to put this guy in here. Now you want to make sure everything's nicely attached, so I would add a coil. I highly recommend adding little snakes coils here to make sure this is attached, because as you're making this, your pieces are drying at different rates, and some things might be drier than others, and if they're not dry at the same rate, they will come apart during the final drying process. So these wet snakes really do help kind of hydrate both areas that are being attached and making sure they stay together. So it's really important to do that. I then use the back of my thumbnail or the curved part of this red rib to get into that little crevice, so it looks like it's one piece together. I'm taking my needle tool here and carving out the inside of that top ring, and that's going to lead directly into that center tube that I put in earlier. So, and then I'm compressing the inside of those to make sure that ring on top, the big center part of my lamp together, and that center tube are all cohesive together. So here you can see. And then I'm going to trim up this edge because I've let it sit up, so it's closer to that leather hard stage for trimming. And I'm rounding it out just like the other side. And then I'm going to just remove a little bit of clay here to make sure it's kind of smooth. Now you can see this is not centered. It is wonky. So you take your time. If yours looks like this, my video is sped up, or otherwise you'd be watching like a 1-hour video. But you need to go slow if you're not perfectly centered, or you will knock something off. And then we're going to flip it and center again. Make sure the children in the house, she's inappropriate. The way she's approaching us, I disassociate, exfoliate, the renegotiate.
She's closing up. Come to visit me, she say that she the loneliest, and it's hard to open up. Open you up like a puffball. Open up. Tear you out for a puffball. Let your emotions waterfall on me. Open up. Open up. Need to deep breathe, heartache complications.
I'm going to grab that other ring that matches the one underneath, and we're going to attach it in the same manner. Scratch it, attach it, and we're going to carve out that center ring. Oh, actually, excuse me, no, we're not. We're going to attach it. We're going to attach the smaller ring and then carve it out.
Request my chariot to get ya. The doors OPN. Take that high road and hop in. You OPN. Bitch, you won't BBM. We should be closer than friends. If you OPN. Engaging you's on my agenda. Request my chariot to get ya. The doors OPN. Take that high road and hop in. Open up, open up. Shut it down like a Macintosh. Open up, open, open. Cold as ice and Coca-Cola. Open up.
So here you see, once you have both rings in, look at, I tried to put that, I tried to compress the inside of those two rings and that didn't work, so don't do that. Once I've got that in there, I'm going to cut the center part of this smaller ring, which should match up to the ring that we put on the inside, so you got to carve as close as possible. And then I'm going to compress it all together, and then you're all set. You have your piece put together, and now you're going to let this set up and dry to leather hard, not hard leather hard, leather hard, and you're ready to carve. Thanks for watching. Bye.